Hello team, welcome back to another Line War cast. This is your map today. Trade route on the bottom, trade route on the left hand side. Our two teams in blue on Alpha Team, Don Daler Wolfblood, and in red, Big Wizoner. On Bravo Team, Antares in orange, and Zelda in teal. We can see where both teams can spawn. Bravo Team in all the spots that are orange, Alpha Team in all the spots that are blue. So it looks like red is going to go here, blue is over here. So these are the two players on Alpha Team. Sandwiched between them is Zelda, and Antares off to the right. So Zelda's in a little bit of a tough spot. Don Daler Wolfblood going for 4 barracks, a 5th barracks in the north to start capping. 2 tanks with a quick gas out of Big Wizoner. And a factory of barracks and a gas. A second factory now for Zelda in response to defend. And Antares to the right going for 3 barracks and 2 factories. So one of the names of the game here, I think, is that Zelda's going to have to defend this and stall long enough for Antares to be able to alleviate some of the pressure from red. Because presumably red and blue are going to push here. The barracks in the north for blue is really good to start getting economy. On the north side of the map, there'll be a little bit of yellow contesting that as well. But it's going to be a lot of infantry. This gas is going to be taken out relatively quickly just because of the number of blue units that are showing up. First tank on the way for Zelda, and of course 2 for red. And Antares is starting to send some artillery and infantry towards Big Wizoner's base. Target command from these infantry onto this gas. There's no way that is going to survive, so presumably Zelda is going to start going for artillery instead of the tanks. You start with 25 gas, so you can move your tanks around even if this refinery were to be destroyed. But it's never a super good feeling when you're building energy tech units without an energy source, or an easy one. This is 3 barracks and a factory from blue, so this is in itself a lot to defend against if you're teal. And then obviously, to add to that, you have red on the south side of you. In the north, his barracks is really kicking in. Antares, however, has about 3 capping squads. So yellow's going to get more economy than blue in the short term in the north. That 1 barracks for blue, though, over time in the north, it's going to pump out a lot of units, which is great for Alpha Team. 2 tanks are flanking, great play from red. To get on top of this barracks, it's really going to leave Zelda with only these units in the mountains and facing an enormous blue army at this point. Luckily for Zelda, Antares is starting to get into the fight, and this is a huge push from yellow into red's base, so red has to be a little bit defensive here. It might depend on how well blue can push into these mountains and whether they can destroy all of these buildings. 2 tanks are definitely going to kill that barracks. And we can kind of just take this look at the battlefield because nothing in the north really matters right now. This is a little bit of crunch time for both teams since these beginning trades are so important. Enormous amount of infantry already on one of the factories for teal. That will go down relatively quickly. I'd be surprised if teal can hold on to any of these buildings, really. I mean, Zelda's in a tough spot here. These 2 tanks, I assume for Zelda, are going to just peace out and go somewhere else to cap one of these territories. If you lose all of your buildings in a team game, you are eliminated. And you have to build production facilities on your own territory that you own. So, Zelda can't build on these yellow squares that Antares has, and hence why we see a barracks in this kind of randomish location. It's actually real well situated because it's directly in the path of Antares' army here, so the army's movement just down south can kind of defend this, at least for like these tanks to get elsewhere. Zelda's now lost 2 of the factories. The last barracks is about to fall. Zelda's 4 infantry actually do take out this gas, which is a huge deal because now none of red's tanks can move. And it's kind of tough because red can't really just rebuild this because it's going to be under pressure from Antares relatively quickly. This is where blue needs to push on the pressure, and that's exactly what Don Taylor Wolfblood's doing. In the north, there's a factory that's good news over time for blue. Barracks for Antares to start capping as well. With the factory in the north, blue can kind of get like a artillery count or more complex units, which will be good because it'll have to, at some point, blue might have to fight yellow in this forest. And having like these artillery pieces or SAMs if yellow were to build an airport seems like a good play. This is a tough situation for red at this point. Losing all of this gas, these tanks are just essentially useless, unfortunately, at the moment. Don Taylor's going to have to get here quick and start stopping these reinforcements. I think if this was the only army that red had to fight, I think it's a hold. With artillery pieces on the way, this is a good idea to switch this from tank production into the artillery since there's no more energy that red can use. So good play. So I think red can defend this. And Zelda still doesn't have another territory cap. These tanks are working on it. But this is why we see Zelda build this barracks right here very quickly. Because when this barracks goes down, Zelda must know that they're going to get eliminated from the game. Red does in fact kind of hold this. It's looking a little bit sketchy, but red will be fine over time. Especially if Don Taylor gets some infantry into the right behind these artillery pieces and kind of distracts them for a little bit. And now it's a mad dash for this barracks. I'm not sure if Zelda has this yet. Factory in the north for Antares to match that blue factory. So back on even footing production-wise in the north. And this barracks is super close to going down. It definitely will, and it does. And where... Is there any other building? There is. Holy cow, look at that. Zelda builds right here. Right beside Big Wizoner's barracks. This is quite the fight. It's in some ways a 1v2 at this point. Because Zelda's, I mean, this is just not enough. Don Taylor and Big Wizoner are going to be able to kill this barracks. It's going to happen relatively quickly. Let's see if this gets capped in the meantime. The push in the south obviously thins out a little bit for Antares here, but it bought a lot of time. It's still a decent amount of artillery for yellow. And let's go big view and let's see if this gets capped quick enough. These units are on move command, I think. So they're not going to help out with the capping. Only the tanks would be capping at the moment. And this much must be something from Zelda as well. Is this just the depot? Antares is going to be in a little bit of trouble. There's no more infantry standing in front of yellow's artillery pieces, so all this blue infantry can just kind of jump on top of these artillery pieces. And infantry, when they're on top of artillery, do relatively decent in trading. Yeah, it is. It's a depot. This is just a depot for Zelda to buy more time. A depot's a relatively cheap structure to build. So Zelda might just be building this to buy some time and then cap this. Because this clearly has to be the play that Zelda's going for, is to try to cap and build on that territory to stay in the game. After this phase of the game, what's going to happen is that blue and red are going to link up, and it's going to be a very strong push. Luckily for Bravo team, this mountain range and these forests are pretty good defensive places to be. Digging in some entrenchments could be huge. Of course, there's two more factories, or there's one more factory, two total in the north for Antares, so those buildings would be able to potentially help out. Another depot for Zelda, just in time, and here we go. This territory is capped. Two factories right away for Zelda, who will have a decent amount of money. Not a decent amount of money, but there will be money to work with, because they haven't been paying any upkeep for any buildings, or very few buildings, for the last few minutes of the game. This will certainly go down. Let's see if Red decides to build a refinery, we can check what's going on in the north, because now it's starting to matter. Artillery infantry battle. Over time, yellow will have more in the north just because it's 2 factories and a barracks against 1 factory and a barracks. And depots sound wild when they're being destroyed. I've never noticed that before. Barracks for Zelda, who will begin to start capping. And Zelda at this point would have by far the lowest economy in the game. Don Daler and Big Wazona are starting to cap all of Zelda's remaining territories down here, which is great for Alpha Team because they're taking away the economy from Bravo Team. And very shortly, Antares is going to either have to back up or at the very least consolidate, because this is going to be a combined army from both blue and red. You can kind of see the idea of what blue is at least thinking on the lines. I guess we're seeing everybody's lines, in fact. I think there's a beta in Line War right now that is being worked on. There's new replay tools. Cannot wait to use them. This is a huge arc from red with this artillery. One of the Zelda's artillery pieces is kind of getting into the fight. But this is a very scary push from red and blue. And will accelerate once blue caps the rest of these territories. Another factory in the top for Don Daler, who's going to go fight this in earnest. Antares is starting to move out in the north. I'm not sure if that's going to work. And another factory for Don Daler in the north. I really like this play. I think that's smart. The north is very, very important. Because if Don Daler can kind of at least block off Bravo Team from pushing at all and make sure that this part of the map doesn't get capped. I mean, there's a lot of economy over here, actually. And Antares is starting to cap all that with 1 barracks. And in Line War, the name of the game really at this point is to cap as many land territories as you possibly can. This is quite the fight, but blue is going to definitely lose this fight just because of the artillery numbers. And surprisingly, Antares, with the help of some artillery pieces from Zelda, Antares is kind of holding. I thought this would definitely be going way worse for Antares. It certainly is about to, just because of how many infantry are here. And they can all jump on these artillery pieces and the infantry that's pushing in for yellow. Great news for Bravo Team with this push, because it's going to start threatening these production buildings from blue. And Antares has another barracks in the north, so over time these are going to pay off big time when it comes to economy, because those infantry are going to cap super quickly. Well, this is a huge moment in the game. If blue and red can destroy some of this production and get into this forest, I think they're going to win, but if they can't, then they're going to lose. The north is a huge problem. And the reason I say that red and blue are going to lose if they can't get in here and do some damage is because, despite what I was saying earlier, Antares has these 2 barracks set up, and the rest of the map would be Bravo teams. And so the economy will just spiral out of control. So here comes the defensive line from Antares. Maybe not even, because by this point, the units will... They have to dig in relatively quickly, because it takes them some time to prepare. And nothing is worse than trying to dig in when the enemy's already on top of you. It's a decent number of infantry for blue. But if these artillery pieces in the forest can just shell them long enough, the numbers will whittle down pretty quickly. Zelda's sending in artillery. This is always a great move. It's probably one of the best things that Zelda could have done after getting the first part of the base knocked out, is just go for a bunch of factories and filter in artillery pieces. It's a fight on 2 fronts here. Clearly, Bravo Team is winning in the top. In the south, it's a little bit more of an open question, but it's such an enormous amount of artillery for yellow. Now the artillery pieces for Alpha Team are starting to get in the mix, which is very important. This is all capped in the bottom left. I guess Alpha Team could think about going for a port and a trade route at this point, doubling down into the push with another factory. I mean, how many factories is this? It's 6 factories going into the south and 2 into the north. Defender's advantage is going to be huge here for Don Daler, because all these units in their production facilities are going to get to the front lines quicker, so over time there will be a little bit more of a push from Alpha Team in the north. This is a pretty nice flank from these artillery pieces. But they're still not really in the fight. They're on a target command, so unfortunately the artillery pieces are going to get right beside this factory before they start shooting. If they're on an attack move, I think they would deploy already. But if the factory goes down, it's all good. It's quite a close battle. I hope that blue starts pushing back in the north, because I feel like that's what's supposed to happen, but maybe I'm totally wrong. And this is the big moment, because over time, yellow continues to cap more and more territory. Yeah, this is still very scary for blue. I take it back. And if this push doesn't work, this is a very expensive fight for Alpha Team. We've seen before on the series attacking into like mountains and forests. It's very difficult. Defenders can really use the terrain to their advantage. I believe that there's going to be some more terrain specific updates and tweaks in the patch. Again, there's a beta. Join the Discord if you'd like to learn more. Airport now for Antares. And there's no SAMs for Alpha Team. I mean, there's 2 back here. And there's no real reason why there'd be any SAMs for Alpha Team at this point. It's been a predominantly artillery battle in this game. Bravo Team is going to start pushing back in the south. And this could be a big problem. Tanks going for a flank. Great idea in theory. Antares is on top of this with a defending force. And now it's such an amount of artillery from yellow and teal that's hard for blue to mount a defense while keeping all the factories alive, because there needs to be kind of a fallback point where everything groups up again. Great play from Don Daler with these tanks to try to avoid this. Might be able to take a barracks out. But there needs to ultimately be an answer for this army. This is a 6 factory push from Bravo Team onto what is going to just be 3 factories. If Red can get a gas and then start using some tanks, that could even the playing field a little bit. Great snipe, and then blue is out of there with the tanks to loop back. They wouldn't have seen this airport. The tanks have pretty bad vision, so they won't see that that's on the way. And we can continue to see how far yellow is getting in all those other territories, which will give Antares a very strong economy. I think there's different things that could happen here, but they're all very tough. And this is probably the best thing that Alpha Team could do. It might be a little too too late here on going for the trade route, but if they could get that trade route up, that would be a lot of money, generating all that cash with the merchant ships. Of course, they'll need to be able to defend this army and not lose entirely in the north. This is pretty good. Blue has managed to hold off and only lost 1 factory, which all things considered is relatively decent. A lot of artillery pieces for red showing up. The gas is finally done, so these tanks can start to move. And 1 tank from blue going off, kind of scouting, looking for this gas. Airport on the way for red, which is a good call as long as that airport can get up before this infantry, if the infantry were to just crush this ground army. Defensive line is going to buy a lot of time. Definitely defending before the units are on top of it, so this is a good play, I think. It's a little bit tougher for blue because these artillery pieces are already so close. First helicopter is done for Antares, and Antares is on top of this one blue tank. And this is still super, super close. Second town on the way for blue. And Don Daler's income looks, I mean, relatively okay. There's enough money in the bank to build a port as soon as they can. But as all this economic expansion starts going on, Antares is still capping the rest of the map. And this is still going so unfortunate. It's a great call to send the helicopters up here. I didn't even think about that. I just assumed the helicopters would go down to the south, but in the north makes a lot of sense. That might be enough for Antares to kind of push this in their favor and destroy another barracks. First port's on the way now for blue. And still a relatively decent hold. What could happen is once there's enough artillery pieces for red here, if blue and yellow were to just try to snipe this gas or just go to the left, red could jump out of this defensive position and just start pushing. We're hearing a tank. Blue's tank going for a drive. No longer going for a drive. So many artillery. And transport plane for red. I actually kind of like this because this gas would be something that they could grab just in general, start expanding to the right, get behind enemy lines. Red jumps out of this artillery position, or defense position, pardon me, to start trying to push. It's a little bit of a sandwich from Alpha Team. Zelda's going right towards the gas, which is unfortunate because, I mean, I guess, does blue even have that many tanks? It's really just a few of them. This is a hard place to defend at this point. It's just too much artillery. Yellow. And with the helicopter cover, the tanks really can't get on top of the artillery. I mean, they couldn't even at this point just because of the number of yellow artillery. Artillery blobs are still super good. Once they get to a certain point, kind of have to just trade space for time since they're so slow. That's really the main weakness. Don Daler's out of gas. That's the beep beep we just hear. Potentially another port on the way, but it might not matter if everything in the north gets wiped out, and Antares has 2 helicopters at this point. First transport plane on the way for red. The gas does, I mean, the factory does go down. And it's difficult because I don't think there's any real way that Alpha Team can continue to push through here, because they're going to run into this mountain range again and this forest. And a defender's advantage, since all these production facilities are closer to the front than all of these production facilities. The north's still kind of in trouble. Second port on the way. So in a few minutes, blue will be making more money. The helicopters for Antares could just end the game here if they kill this port, and especially this city. Or this town, pardon me. If you destroy a town, then the port that's connected to it will also explode. Airport for blue. Likely, I mean, airport and helicopters are a great way to get rid of all this artillery. That's a tough moment for Alpha Team to lose that port when the second port's so close to being done. Big Wazoners, commandos are on the right hand side. What turns out to be just a phenomenal run by from Zelda to find this airport. Go around this red blob of artillery entirely. Red's gonna have pushing power, but again, once they get here, it's gonna just be so many units to defend against. Helicopters are working on that town. And Antares is going for more economic development. Love the barracks from Big Wazoner. in the bottom right. More transport planes on the way. I mean, it's not really much else to build. There's some SAMs already for Antares. Second airport, all going strikers. Or rather, there's a striker on one of the airports. Strikers, I think, make a lot of sense here. These airports likely can hit this town as well. Their range would be pretty close to this, but they would be able to get close enough that they would kind of aggro to the town and destroy it. Gas snipe from red. And that actually knocks out the energy from these helicopters. You can see the black plumes of smoke that were going on, indicating that they are out of gas. There still needs to be an answer for this artillery blob. First helicopter for Don Daler is nearly done. There's another helicopter on the way on what is now a second airport for Blue. And potentially with enough helicopters, they can wipe all this. There's not a ton of infantry with it. There's no SAMs, so the helicopters aren't really in any danger. And this is good, taking economy away from Antares, who goes for 2 barracks, making commandos, likely in response to this proxy base. Because nothing really fights a commando army like your own commando army. And the gas here for Antares to keep these planes flying, because right now Antares can't send any of the air units out. I think this just stays as a battle of attrition and kind of here between the two bases. These tanks from Zelda might be able to get on top of the gas, but in general I think that Alpha Team could defend this. It's really this that is, I think, the killing blow. Because any gains that red is making on the far right, Antares is kind of knocking out and negating by taking away from blue over here. Helicopters do so much DPS because they just hover over the target, but there's just so much artillery. The second helicopter, pardon me, from Antares, for Don Daler, pardon me, holy cow, the second helicopter for blue is done. 2 helicopters, definitely going to lose a barracks, likely going to lose the town as well, just because it's going to take a while for those helicopters to be able to kill it all. And Antares just starting to build more factories and letting the eco kind of speak for itself. Because at this point, yellow can just kind of outproduce both players. First town's on the way. This is now an objective for Bravo Team to capture the other side of the port, the other side of the trade route. And this is a tough defense. I was also wrong to say that this is going to stay here. It's a great flank from Zelda. And getting this mountain range kind of matters. What is now 3 helicopters is slowly working through all the artillery pieces. But the town does go down. One of the airports will. Maybe this airport can be saved. There's still no SAMs really for yellow up here. Don Daler put down a factory somewhere, probably up here, yeah, in the far left. Great drop from Big Wazoner. I'm not sure, did the commandos not drop out of that plane, unfortunately? And this is now 7 factories pumping into the bottom against 3 factories, really. Technically 4, but it takes so long for these units to reinforce. Zelda's tanks wrap around the back to kill this gas. Wazoner, pardon me, is unfortunately going to lose that barracks. But the commandos will kill these 2 barracks. There's just 3 towns for Antares, so it's just so much money that Yellow is making at this point. In the north, the 2nd airport is likely going to go down. It's very injured. The only good thing for Blue is that helicopters were made, so when this airport dies, unlike a airport full of strikers or planes, none of the aircraft are going to die because they fly off and land somewhere else. Nothing hurts more than watching an airport get sniped when there's like 5 strikers sitting on it. Another factory from Antares just to make sure that this push through the back works. And at this point you can really see that Alpha Team's kind of constrained at the bottom left side of the map. These commandos have all been wiped out. And there's no more proxy buildings. And now at this point, Bravo Team just put down more and more production. Build more economy all over the map. And then slowly overwhelm this. This infantry is enough that they're going to be able to kill at least 2 of the buildings themselves. Big was owner resigns. Don Daler likely about to. And there you go. Great game. Very close game at the beginning. Very well played from both teams. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty close. Income starts to skyrocket near the end. Cool. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you have a wonderful night, day, evening, whatever it is. If you want to learn more about the game, chat with folks, check out the Line War Discord. We'll see you soon. Peace.